Gibbs the back. Give it to him to the outside. Blocking, and into the end zone he goes. Tristan Colon led the way.
Jahmyr Gibbs, pretty good. Tied Barry Sanders last night, 3 touchdowns in a game. Gives him the same number that Barry Sanders has for running backs under the age of 24 years old. Gibbs is off to an incredible start to his career. He is a special running back. There are several in the league. It'd be nice to get one of those somehow in the offseason. Detroit wins the game 44-30 over the Cowboys. And what was really kind of a massive game for both, neither would have been eliminated with a loss, but to kick off week 14, to have a game of that magnitude, and we've talked about it all week long, there are several of these games during the course of this week. But the Lions needed it to keep pace in the division, to keep their chances for a potential wild card alive, and they got it. And their stars performed. Gibbs, 3 touchdowns rushing. Amon-Ra, who was apparently iffy for the game last night, 6 catches for St. Brown, 92 yards in the game. Jamison Williams, 7 for 96. And Goff was sharp, throwing for 309 yards in the game. Meantime, for Dallas, I'm sorry, but George Pickens, was he aware that the game was last night? This is why he isn't in Pittsburgh anymore. What's the deal with George Pickens, who has played very much like one of the top 3, 4, 5 receivers in the game all season, and then last night literally looked like he was not interested in participating in the game. Short-arming passes, not giving 100% effort on routes. One of them cost the Cowboys a turnover to start the third quarter. That was an odd game from George Pickens, but it might be the reason that Pittsburgh said, we don't want to pay him. We'll let somebody else pay him. Let's get something for him. Dallas is going to have a very interesting decision, because it's games like last night where you look at George Pickens and you say, dude, when you're right, you're with everybody at the top. You're right there. And then what was this? Like, you were not trying in the game. Not to mention they lost CeeDee Lamb, concussion in the game. We'll see how long that keeps CeeDee Lamb out. Look, the Cowboys at 6-6-1 will be favored in the rest of their games. Vikings, Chargers next 2 at home. The Chargers obviously won't be an easy game. And then at Washington on Christmas Day, and at the Giants to finish up. But with the way things were going, I think a lot of people expected Dallas to win that game. I know Cowboy fans were super excited for the game. Detroit's defense and their pass rush last night was awesome. And their starting field position, I wrote this down earlier this morning. I mean, listen to their starting field position all night. Their own 36, their own 47. Dallas is 42, their own 29, their own 47, their own 26. Dallas is 14 after a turnover early in the third quarter. Their own 32, their own 32, their own 41, and their own 49. Kickoff returns were a major plus for Detroit. They averaged 33 yards per kickoff return. And they just kept setting Detroit up with incredible field position in the game. 44-30. I was a little bit off with my lean on the under. Just a little bit. But it was not an official smell test pick. Those are coming up a little bit later on in the show. This from Will to kick off the show after talking briefly about last night's game. Will writes, Kevin, if Jayden gets hurt, it's on you and people like you. I think Will's written me before, or maybe it was somebody else. He's the franchise, and you want him out there for totally meaningless games, just, as you would say, silly. From DK, glad Jayden might play. The goal should be to protect Marcus. There's no need for him to play in these final 5 preseason games. It's a good one, DK. Appreciate that. Man, stop it, people. Stop it. I mean, I don't personally even view it as worth debating. I guess it's not unreasonable for people to be concerned, to be angst-ridden, and to factor in, by the way, the history of our franchise into feeling the way you feel. I think I understand that part of it. But if you're trying to be objective and you take emotion out of it, he's in his second season. He's barely played this year. And when he has played, it hasn't been with his guys. Like, he's got a chance to take the field Sunday and maybe for the final 5 games with Terry McLaurin on the field. Hello? With Noah Brown on the field. With Zach Ertz, who hasn't left the field. With an offensive line that has matured as the season's gone on and become a pretty good offensive line. With a running back by committee situation that hasn't been that bad. Led by, I think, a guy that I hope gets more opportunities down the stretch than less, and that's Chris Rodriguez. With, potentially the development of maybe a number 3 in Treylon Burks. Debo out there healthy. No, man, you got 30% of the season left. What are you talking about? I can't get on board with shutting down your second-year quarterback when he's barely played. I'd shut him down if he were injured. That's a different conversation. Completely different. But if he's cleared and he's 100%, and it certainly would appear that we're going to get the announcement later on today. I think we're going to, that Jayden Daniels is going to start Sunday in Minnesota. We'll see. What time does Quinn talk today?
I believe 12:30.
12:30. So we'll have Quinn's comments at 12:30. But I think after he was kind of, cleared and practiced yesterday, I think he's going to be the starting quarterback Sunday. I'm happy about it. Really happy about it. Excited about it. I want to see our franchise quarterback play in 2025 with a full array of professional players on the field with him, which we haven't seen since week 1. I guess week 2 to a certain degree. That didn't go well. I understand. I understand it didn't go well. But no, this fear of, and this idea of bubble wrapping him, as Doc would say, I'm not on board with that at all. And God, I'm praying that he stays healthy. I mean, it would be crushing if he got hurt again, like a serious injury. It would really be crushing. And I know what's coming with him on the field. There are 2, potential incredibly polarizing narratives that will set up for the offseason for all of us in our little, community of fans of this team. If he gets injured, my God, the conversation about how irresponsible the franchise was. They had one job, and that was to protect him, and they didn't do it, because that's coming if he gets hurt. Secondly, if he doesn't play well, oh my God, what are we talking about? This dude really had a sophomore slump, really regressed to the mean. You mathematicians. I those are risks. The second one, I'm not really concerned with, because quite honestly, I just want him to play. And if there are some rough spots here or there in year 2, I'd rather him go through those right now. I'd rather him have, some rust on Sunday, maybe against the Giants, a little less rust, and then play in some games in which the opponents are going to need to win. The Eagles and the Cowboys. Who knows? Maybe the Cowboys will be eliminated by the time we get there. They probably won't be, though, on Christmas Day. 3 weeks from today, right? 3 weeks from yesterday. Happy snow day, everybody. That was nice.
Not getting here. I'll give you that.
Oh, come on.
Oh, Kevin.
We're the worst.
Oh,
we're
I
the
know.
absolute worst.
I agree, which is why
Jesus,
I didn't like being
the
on the road.
roads were wet.
Listen, getting to the highway was the worst part. Getting on the highway, you had to deal with everybody else. But getting to the highway, I was slipping, sliding around.
Let me just tell you something. Get prepared for it.
Oh, I know.
Doug Kammerer's, winter weather forecast, and you look at some of the extended stuff, we are in a stretch of winter here pretty early for us. Which, by the way, if it's going to come, I want it to be at holiday time.
Of course. You always prefer a white Christmas.
But it was very pretty out there this morning. I enjoy it. To me, it's like if it's going to be cold, it might as well snow. And if it's not going to snow, I don't want it to be cold. I would prefer it to be 60.
Take. That's fair
with
take.
No wind. I just, on the Jayden thing, there's some sports talk, debate risk, which, by the way, isn't really a risk if we get it. It's actually a really good thing for what I do. But for me personally, I want him to go out there and I want him to play well. I want him to remind those that actually have lost faith just how good he is. He's going to have an opportunity to do that, much more so than the last few times he was out there because of who will be on the field with him. The defense has even improved to a certain degree. So maybe the context of these games won't be, oh my God, if Jayden doesn't, lead the offense to 30 plus, we've got no chance of winning. We'll see. I'm still not totally there on the defense. It's better, but they also played Miami and Denver in their last two. And Minnesota stinks offensively. And J.J. McCarthy probably going to be the starter. It'd be just like this team defensively to let J.J. McCarthy go, 21 of 24 for 265 and 3 touchdowns.
I had that thought last night.
Yeah, but he hasn't been able to hit the ocean from a boat. That's how inaccurate he's been. And so, he's going to have opportunities for some pitch and catch because playing that zone coverage, everything in front without a pass rush will give him an opportunity to throw it to Justin Jefferson. They're facing one of the top 2 receivers in the league on Sunday. Jordan Addison's pretty good too. Their tight end's good. They have skill position players. They're good on defense. I'm going to get to my breakdown of this game. But the supporting cast for the first time since the opener on offense is there. And I'm excited to see it. And I would never, ever advocate that they put him out there if he's not 100%, if he's not cleared, if there was any risk whatsoever other than the normal playing football risk. There's a risk playing football. Now, the thing that I wanted to talk about here is how Cliff calls the game. Because I do think there should be some thought to, well, why over these final 5 games do we need to run him on quarterback counters and quarterback powers? Why do we need all the designed runs? I love him as part of the offense. Jayden's great at him. Marcus is great at him. It's a part of what we do, but we don't have to do it to win games. The reason, by the way, that offensive coordinators with quarterbacks who are good runners or great runners, they have designed runs and option runs, but even more so designed runs, because you then know for sure that you're going to be what they describe, and we've talked about for years since Mike Shanahan described it, they're going to be 11 on 11 in the run game. When a quarterback hands the ball off to a running back, it's 10 versus 11 because the quarterback's not involved in the play after he hands the ball off. When the quarterback is a runner, then he's the 11th guy involved in the play. And you are playing 10 blockers, 1 runner, 11 on 11 football. And that's why Josh Allen has a lot of designed runs. That's why Lamar Jackson has a lot of designed runs. That's why, you have, really, I think the team that started it more than any, and it was because of his size and because he was a true dual threat quarterback. But Cam Newton in my memory, is really the first in which a team said, yeah, he's 6'6" and he's 250 pounds and he's basically a bulldozer with the ball. We can run quarterback powers and quarterback counters and quarterback sweeps. And then they really were the first in the NFL to introduce a lot of the zone read, even though they did it from shotgun, not pistol, and they did it primarily in the red zone, not in the middle of the field. And then in 2012, we know what happened with what the Shanahans did with RG3, introducing true dual threat quarterback football. And, you know, even though you'll hear people, including pundits that you might respect, say, remember the Wildcat? That was, you know, that got figured out and was nixed from the game. Remember the zone read? That got figured out. We don't see that anymore. Really? We see it every Sunday. We see it with quarterbacks who aren't mobile every Sunday. The Wildcat has disappeared to a certain degree because think about it. When you're in the Wildcat and the quarterback's on the field, you're 10 on 11. You know, you're not 11 on 11 in the run game. Washington ran 2 Wildcat plays last weekend against Denver. Neither one of them worked. Not against that defense anyway. But in terms of Jayden, and, you know, I would like to see Cliff be a little bit more protective. And to me, that means basically eliminating the designed runs. You know, they ran a quarterback draw last week on 3rd and 3. What a risky play that was at the end of regulation. You know, the quarterback draws tend to be a little bit less risky than quarterback power, quarterback counter, you know, where there's a snap and basically the quarterback's a running back following blockers. And a play that ends up typically in the field of play and typically in a pile. I don't want any of that with Jayden. Not that the risk is greater than him in a pocket hanging in there or him scrambling or him on his own read, but I think it's slightly higher. It's not a lot higher. It's slightly higher. Let me rephrase. Because you're going to end up getting tackled in the field of play. A quarterback draw, typically the C's part, and you can slide, or you can make it into the end zone if it's done in the red zone. I wouldn't like to see those either, really. I have no problem with read option being a part of the attack. I think you've got to have, you know, Jayden's dual threat ability be presented to the defense. I think it makes a big difference for an offense. And he's got to make the right decisions. You know, as a zone read guy, he can't pull it with the end sitting there waiting for him. He's got to be a good decision maker. But the zone read typically, especially if you get out on the edge, gives the quarterback a chance to A, get out of bounds, B, slide before he's tackled. I mean, you can't take away his off-schedule scrambling ability. I mean, you want him to move out of a pocket that's dangerous, you know, and create with his legs. Do I want to see what we saw against Seattle? No, but I don't think we will because there are real receivers who are on the field that will be running the correct routes. I don't want to see him take a snap, look and say, well, Tay Martin, Robbie Chosen didn't go to where he was supposed to go. I got to take off. I got to make something happen. I don't want to see that. Don't put him out on the field if you got guys that aren't running the right routes and you can't run the right offense that you want to run. But I would certainly protect him from many of the designed runs, A, and then B, please God, if the game is over in the 4th quarter and there's no chance of winning. See the Tampa Bay opener last year, down 37-13, running zone read keepers in the red zone on a condensed field where he took a beating, and see the end of the Seattle game on an RPO and 2 dropbacks on the final drive, getting your ass kicked in a game that you had 0 chance of winning. There weren't enough possessions left in the game for you to win the game if everything had gone your way. Please don't put him in harm's way at the end of games if the game is over. Keep him in the game and have him hand it off all you want. Have him throw quick bubble screens. But don't do what you did at the end of the Seattle game or at the end of the Tampa Bay game in the opener year 1 in 2024. Other than that, I want to see him play football. I want to see him let it rip. I'd love to see more under center play action. Getting a little bit more here in recent weeks, not a lot more. Washington's still at the bottom of the NFL in under center snaps. I'd like to see some play action. Play action tends to be protective. I'd like to see some open receivers. Minnesota's defense is legit. They're legit and they're coordinated in a way that it's odd playing them. So we'll see what happens Sunday, but I'm not. Sorry, Will. I don't think it's stupid. Personally, I don't want to say that it's stupid or silly that you think the way you think. I think that there's a reason that you think the way you think. And I think being a longtime fan of this team, there's this inherent whatever will go wrong, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. We've lived it. We lived it with RG3. But there are 5 games left. If there was 1 or 2 games left, different conversation. We got nearly 30% of the season left. I want to see him go out, play great. I want to see this team play great. I want to see them win games. I'd love to see a little mini winning streak here over the next 2 going into the Philadelphia game on December 20th. Would love to see that. Put some fear into Philly and Dallas if they need those games. Not into draft position on December 5th. Talk to me on January 2nd or whatever before the season finale. If there's a difference between, say, picking 7th and picking 13th, then I'll be more open to, maybe we go with a lot of the young guys and take a look at some people, sit Jayden, play Josh Johnson, sit Mariota. DK wants us to sit Mariota now, protect him. Remember, he's not under contract for next year. He should be. Hopefully, they'll get that done. All right. When we come back, I will give you my keys to a win over the Minnesota Vikings. And then you guys can jump on here at the end of the first hour at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What are you hoping to see Sunday? I do think, and I think we go with the assumption right now, that Jayden's going to be the starter. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Phone lines are open. 301-230-0980. Minnesota on Sunday, the last of 5 games. Let's just go with the assumption that Jayden Daniels will be the starter. There certainly seems to be a trend towards that. We'll find out for sure. More likely than not at 12:30. We will carry Quinn. So you'll hear what Quinn said sometime between 12:30 and the end of the show. Ben Standing scheduled to join us on the show today. Jordan Dajani from CBSSports.com will join us on the show as well. Lots of picks, go around the NFL, smell test, etc. So let me just give you a little bit on Minnesota. Start with what's good about Minnesota. They're a good defensive football team. They've been a good defensive football team for the last couple of years. Brian Flores is a really creative, hyper-aggressive at times, but really an unusual defensive coordinator. He tries, I think more so than almost any coordinator in the game, to confuse the other team pre-snap. He's all about pre-snap and what it looks like and what you think you're seeing based on tendencies, but there really aren't a lot of tendencies. He's an excellent defensive coordinator with good talent. The player that I'm just going to mention right now, he's actually one of my favorite players in the league, is Andrew Van Ginkel. You know, he was in Miami for all those years, then joined Minnesota last year, number 43 linebacker, 6'4", 250, can run, long arms. The thing about Van Ginkel is if you go back through his career in Miami, this dude sniffs out everything. He's one of the great feel and anticipation defenders in the league. I wouldn't throw a bubble screen or any flat pass in his direction. I would just say wherever 43 is, that's not where we're going to throw the football because he has ESP. He must be a great all-around athlete because he has just great athletic feel for the game. You know, last year in Minnesota, he also had 11.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, multiple forced fumbles. He's a force. Now, he has not played in every game this year. I just would keep it away from Van Ginkel, 43. He's just a playmaker. He's one of the really good playmakers in the league. That's number one. All right, that's key. That's going to be my number one defensive key. But just to mention, they are good on defense. How good? Well, they're 10th in yards allowed, 11th in DVOA, 12th on third down, number 3 in red zone defense. And keep in mind, being number 10 in yards allowed, when their offense basically hands the ball over to the defense on a regular basis, their offense is so bad, we'll get to that in a moment. They've got the worst turnover differential in the league at minus 15. They've got 26 giveaways on the season. 26. League leader in giving the ball away. So when you're 10th in defensive yards allowed with an offense that can't do anything right, that's actually even more impressive because of how much they're out there and the positions they get put into. So I'm impressed with Minnesota's defense. I've been impressed with Minnesota's defense since Brian Flores got there. I don't know if Flores will ever get another opportunity to be a head coach with everything that happened in Miami, but he's a really good defensive coach. They've got other players on defense. Jonathan Grenard is a playmaker. He's a problem as a pass rusher, number 58. Hargrave's on that team. You heard Charch yesterday, who's a Vikings guy, tell us that Jonathan Allen has not played well this year for them. They've got a playmaker in Isaiah Rodgers on the back end. Metellus is a playmaker and a hitter. And, of course, Harrison Smith is still back there. I mean, I don't even know how old Harrison Smith is now. I'm going to say he's at least 35 years old. He might be older. But he's been certainly one of the better safeties in the game for a long period of time. Dallas Turner, their number 1 pick last year, leads the team in sacks. I like number 0, Ivan Pace Jr. I think he's been a good player since he arrived. in Minnesota as, I think, an undrafted free agent. They're good on defense. They're good on defense at home. That's the challenge, just like Denver was. Denver, obviously, the challenge was defense, and Washington did a phenomenal job against Denver's defense. Washington has really faced the gauntlet, man, of teams and of defenses. The Seahawks, the Broncos, the Chargers D earlier in the year, the Packers D in week 2. Minnesota's faced the same thing. Washington's obviously lost their 7 in a row. The Vikings have lost 4 in a row, 6 of their last 7. But listen to this stretch of opponents they faced. They beat one of these teams. But the Eagles, Chargers, Lions, who they beat at Ford Field, Ravens, Bears, Packers, Seahawks. Like, this is a game for them, and it's like, whew, we can come up and breathe a little bit. We're not playing Seattle and Green Bay and their defense the last 2 weeks. We get Washington, and Washington's saying the same thing. We don't have to see Denver or Seattle or Detroit. We get Minnesota. So it's 2 teams that I think expected before the season began to be in a playoff race, to be in playoff contention, to make the playoffs, as both did last year, whose seasons have gone sideways. Washington's, for the reasons of injuries, number 1. Count 5 spaces before you get to number 2. In Minnesota's case, it's been quarterback. J.J. McCarthy hasn't just been terrible. He's been, epically terrible, like historically terrible for his first, 6 starts, 8 for his career, 7 for his career, whatever it is. He's been terrible. He cannot throw the ball accurately. He can't throw the ball on time. His processing is bad. His mechanics are terrible. Kevin O'Connell said 3 weeks ago, we have to reinvent his mechanics. They traded up for him. It's too early on a guy. He's a winner. He's a tough guy for sure. There's no doubt about it, but he keeps getting injured. He's coming off concussion. I'm expecting him to play. If it's not him, it's going to be this guy, Max Brosmer, who played at Minnesota, the University of. And I remember watching him last year, maybe against Maryland or maybe 2 years ago. And I thought, I think that guy's an NFL quarterback. Well, he got his first start last week in Seattle against that defense and promptly threw 4 interceptions, including an underhand chuck as he was getting sacked that got returned for a touchdown. But J.J. McCarthy will be by far and away the worst quarterback Washington has faced all season long. I mean, Russell Wilson in week 1 was pretty terrible. Pretty terrible. Was Geno Smith worse than Russell Wilson was? I'm looking through the quarterbacks we have faced. Far different than last year's list. So now you get a chance, right? You get a chance with McCarthy, then another young quarterback in Jackson Dart next week before it's Philly and Dallas to finish up the season. But the Vikings are in the position they are in because they got quarterback issues, man. If you've read anything about this situation, you're seeing, recently that their general manager, who's not been able to hit anything in the draft, basically. I don't know how, Adolfo Mensa makes it past this season, but you're now reading that Kevin O'Connell wasn't completely on board with J.J. McCarthy. At first, and we know this, especially those of us that follow it, he really wanted Cousins back after the Achilles. And then wanted to do something last year to keep a veteran because I think he had an inkling that it was going to be a long road for J.J. McCarthy. Maybe he'll light it up the rest of the year. He's a winner. He's a tough guy, and it's really early to declare anything on J.J. McCarthy, that position more than anything else. But the fear is that there's just nothing intuitive. There's nothing natural that typically is associated with guys who can do it. That's the problem, and that's what the concern is in Minnesota. So Washington's got a team offensively. Yeah, they've got Justin Jefferson. Yeah, they've got Jordan Addison. Yeah, they've got T.J. Hawkinson. Yeah, they've got, Aaron Jones, although he's hurt. Jordan Mason's a really good backup running back. They've got a decent offensive line. It's been injured a little bit here and there with Darisaw. Defensively, it's a good team. It's a well-coached defense, and it's a challenge. It's an absolute challenge. You even look at the game they played last week in Seattle. It's not the Seattle offense that dominated Minnesota's defense. It was Max Brosmer throwing the ball to Seattle 4 times. That doesn't help, And then they had an Aaron Jones fumble, so they turned it over 5 times. The truth is, Seattle really struggled to move the football against Minnesota. Darnold threw for like 128 yards, I wrote down. They had, less than 4 yards per carry. It was like 3.8 yards per carry with their backs. So we saw what Seattle can do offensively. Everybody has seen what Seattle can do offensively, and Minnesota kind of shut them down. But the turnovers killed them. I think that this is like Denver, but they passed the test last week. But they've got a good defensive football team, not so much on offense. But then again, our defense isn't very good, although it's improved. All right, number 1, Van Ginkel aside, and I'll get to him. The key to this game is defensively stopping the run. Because if you stop the run and you put it on McCarthy or Brosmer, if he ends up playing, you are going to have, I think, the best day of the season defensively. That's saying something because it won't take much to have the best defensive day of the season. But if you can stop the run, and remember, last week, Denver didn't run it well against Washington. I thought that was the best run-stopping day of the year since early in the season, when they face some of those banged-up offensive lines. But number 1 to me Sunday is stop the run, put the game on McCarthy or Brosmer, and you might end up with more than 1 takeaway in a game. How about 2 or 3 or 4? That could happen. You could certainly end up with the other team punting 3 or 4 or 5 times in the game. Number 2, you've got to protect the football and play a clean game. Minnesota's really capable of turning you over. They've got the worst turnover differential in the league, but it's because of 26 giveaways. They have not a league-leading takeaway count. They don't. It's like 11 or 12. Well, if they have 26, it would be 11 takeaways. But they're capable of takeaways the way they play. They're aggressive. They've got playmakers. That may play into Washington's favor in terms of explosives. But you cannot play anything other. And I know I've said this so many times this year, but you've got to play a clean football game. If you're going to actually have a chance by stopping the run and getting the ball and getting field position and not trying to chase, a 2-touchdown deficit because the other team's really good on offense, they're not. You just can't turn it over. You can't commit penalties. You can't drop passes. Clean game, especially on offense. Number 3, and this is what I said at the top. Know where Andrew Van Ginkel, number 43, is, and please do not tempt him. Do not involve him in a game-changing play. He will make it. Don't think you're going to fool him with a quick bubble or a quick, flat pass or screen. He reads that so well. I would not go in his direction at all. Number 3, let's run the football on Sunday. Let's keep them off balance. Let's keep in the good down to distance. There was a real attempt on Sunday night against a really good defense by Cliff to not get behind the chains. They got behind the chains a few times, and more times than not, it was because of a bad call. The grounding call. There were another couple of penalties or a sack that Marcus took. The play where he threw the ball backwards to Bates, which was not a great play. By the way, Suter pointed out on that play, if somehow Bates can block Benito, it's a 30-yard play. Terry absolutely was wide open, really well-designed play. On the play in which Marcus took the snap, got immediate pressure from Benito, and instead of just taking the sack, tried to do something with it, threw it backwards to Bates, who was lucky enough and fortunate enough to fall on it for a 7-yard loss. But you've got to try to run the football, quick game. You got to take advantage of, the field position you have for starters, but you've got to stay in good down and distance. And then lastly, indoors in a game that's probably going to be pretty close. I think there's a chance this is a game that could go either way at the end. Indoors, they've got a kicker in Will Reichert who's good from 60 whatever. Our guy, when we get into, the plus 40, you got to come away with 3. And you can't be afraid to come away with 3. This is not a game in which you got to be a 4-down team. I'm not saying you pass on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, but you got to convert on these drives when you are in their territory. Indoors, you got to come away with points. I like our chances. I think it's a much tougher game than maybe some of you do. I just think that they're defensively very good. Their special teams can be very good. Their kicker, especially. But this is stop the run, put it on McCarthy, and keep the ball away from Van Ginkel and stay in good down and distance, playing a clean football game. And you're going to have a chance to win this one and break the 7-game losing skid. All right, your turn. 301-230-0980. We'll get to you after this.
All right, happy Friday, everybody. We start off with Thursday Night Football. The Cowboys belted by the Lions. Lions defense comes alive in the fourth quarter. 2 of their 5 sacks coming when it mattered most, as well as a late interception by DJ Reed to put the game officially on ice. The Lions win 44-30. And Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy's clear concussion protocol will be available this weekend against Washington. Dan Quinn will have news on Jayden Daniels' status later today. Keep it locked right here on the Team 980 as the presser unfolds in the 12 o'clock hour. Tonight, the Red Hot Caps ride a 6-game win streak into a late-night matchup in Anaheim against the Ducks. Logan Thompson expected to be in net for this one. 10 p.m. puck drop over on 106.7 The Fan. Pregame set to roll after Linnell Willingham wraps up at 9:45. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. And you can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Anything you want to discuss related to Jayden's likely return, I would put it at better than 50-50. We'll know later on, or we'll know early this afternoon, I would think, when Dan Quinn addresses the media before the final practice of the week leading into the game against the Vikings. Sunday, 1 o'clock. Man, there are a lot of good 1 o'clock games on Sunday. I wish Washington were playing like one of those international games this week because, 1 o'clock, you've got Colts, Jags, Steelers, Ravens. A really good game at 4:25, Bears at Packers. Weather is going to be a factor this weekend in Buffalo for the Bengals and the Bills, and the Packers, Bears, no snow, but like 15 degrees at game time. So we're at that time of year. It'll be a good NFL Sunday. 301-230-0980. If you've been thinking about new windows, no need to think any further. Please give Window Nation a chance, at the very least, to come out and give you a free in-home estimate. If you call them at 866-90-NATION or you go to windownation.com, you mention you heard about Window Nation from this show, from me, Kevin Sheehan. They'll schedule an in-home estimate for you. It'll take an hour or less. It'll be done when it's convenient for you. They won't pressure you after they leave you with the quote. And right now, their year-end sale gives you an opportunity to basically pay half price and not pay any interest if you choose to finance the purchase until the year 2030. 50% off all window and window styles and 0% interest, for 5 years. Replace your older windows with higher quality windows. You'll save on your heating bill this winter. You'll save on your air conditioning bill next summer. Window Nation offers a lifetime warranty on all of your purchases through Window Nation. You can relax knowing your home's protected far into the future. You can trust them. They've got over 45,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've got a 96% customer satisfaction rating. They've installed over 3 million windows across the country. If you've been thinking about new windows, all I ask, give them a chance to come out and give you a free in-home estimate. It's worked for everybody that's ever used them that I've referred. Again, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Greg in Gaithersburg. Greg, go ahead.
How you doing?
What's up, Greg?
I'm upbeat about Sunday because I think we're starting to get everybody back. Not everybody, but some of our key players. We played well last week against Denver. I'm kind of psyched. I feel like I did earlier in the year, and I give them a good chance to come away with a W. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I weirdly, during the, last third of the Snyder era, when we got to this point in the season, I mean, I couldn't be checked out because we did a lot of hours and show content around these games. But man, there was no juice other than, just watching it and talking about it afterwards. I mean, I had, all the other TVs going, laptops going, watching everything else other than our game. I feel like Sunday is the beginning of maybe a nice ending to what's been a miserable year. And I know it won't lead to contention for postseason or, a Super Bowl run, which they had last year, and a chance for it. But I really want to see what I was expecting to see before the season began, specifically on offense, because I didn't know what to expect on defense. And we haven't had a chance to see that. So I'd like to see that. I'm looking forward to, what if Jayden's out there and he's healthy, what's it going to look like to have Terry, Debo healthy, Noah Brown, an offensive line that's grown and evolved and become a really good offensive line. Remember, early in the season, they didn't even have Sam Cosmi. Josh Connerly's playing his first couple of games as a pro. The offensive line improvement, maturity is another reason to I want to see what it looks like. We just haven't had a chance to truly see what this 2025 offense could be. Maybe we saw an inkling of it Sunday night against an excellent defense, with Terry back, with Terry and Debo on the field healthy at the same time. We saw something there. We saw Cliff call a really good game, given the defense that they were facing. Dale in Fairfax. Dale, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
I'm good, Dale. How are you?
Good. What was it, 2 days ago, we sort of agreed to disagree about Jayden pulling back, and I said, hey, there had been regression. So I pulled up all the stats I could grab, and I just got a few of them here to show that, regression is relative. But his first year for per game passing percentage, 69%, he's now down to 62.5. His passing yardage.
Dale, don't waste my time and the listeners' time. All due respect.
Okay.
He hasn't been out there with his guys. He's been out there for 5.5 games, and he didn't play with an NFL cast around him in 3.5 or 4 of those games. Of course, his completion percentage is going to be less than it was last year. He had guys running the wrong routes in the Seattle game.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not saying
so. What's the point? What's the point of comparing it to last year?
It is because he's pulling back a little bit. I'm not saying it's a disaster.
You would too if you didn't know where the receivers were going to be.
Well, that's true. But like I said, you're talking about causation. I'm just telling you that there's been a general pullback. But your point's well taken. He needs to play.
Look, your point's well taken in the sense that, of course, the numbers aren't the same as they were last year. But there's a major, major obvious reason as to why, and it's not because he's a lesser player.
No, it's not because he's a lesser player, but the numbers are down. And I don't want him to end up like we saw with Cam Newton, a short career. I think we're seeing a short career with Lamar Jackson. He looks beat up and almost spent. Running quarterbacks don't do well in the NFL because you're playing against 300.
Jayden's not a running quarterback. Lamar Jackson's been a run-first quarterback. That's not what Jayden Daniels is. If you think that's the case, then you think Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are running quarterbacks.
No, I don't. Josh Allen, I do question what they're doing with him. Patrick Mahomes, no.
They do overwork him as a runner, there's no doubt. But Jayden's not Lamar Jackson. Their games are different. Jayden's a much more polished thrower of the football, traditional thrower of the football than Lamar was. I thought Lamar looked much better last year. I'm a Lamar fan. I root for him. But, obviously he's banged up this year. He's not healthy. But he's been much more a part of a run game than Jayden has been. Jayden's yardage last year came primarily as a scrambler as much as anything else. Lamar's was
that's what he should
zone
be.
read,
and that's
designed, and scramble.
I just don't like the designed runs. It's going to cut his career really short.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of some of those designed runs either. But, yeah.
Okay, good deal, guy. We agree.
All right. Thanks, Dale. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I think we're beyond trying to compare his numbers through 5.5 games to last year's numbers. It's just apples and oranges. Like, if you come to the conclusion, even based on the Kurt Warner video, which, yes, I shared this with you a few weeks ago, and Collinsworth talked about it Sunday night. The Seattle game was a disaster from a receiver standpoint. If you want to blame the coaching, if you want to blame the preparation of the players, whatever it was, the reason he dropped back and didn't appear to see it like he did last year is because what he was looking for wasn't there. They weren't in the right spots. Ian wants to weigh in. Go ahead.
You sound so defensive when you're defending Jayden Daniels.
No, I think that's your interpretation. It's more frustration than anything else with people who don't understand that when you basically have the most damaged team in the league in terms of contributing players, you're not going to end up with the same performance.
I think we all understand.
No, not everybody does, Ian. Not everybody does.
You can't
Dale was giving me his stats compared to last year.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. We understand that players have been injured, but I keep going back to he did not look good in week 1 and week 2. You
Disagree
agree
about
with
week
that,
1.
correct? Okay. I mean, I was there. I don't think he played his A-plus game. According to you, you didn't even give him an A or a B-plus or anything, right?
No, I thought it was I think it was like a B game, but we're comparing it to greatness, but it was a solid starting game. It wasn't a bad game. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me. Here they are. 19 to 30, 233, a touchdown, no picks, and he rushed for 68 yards on 11 carries. Against, it's week 1 too, Ian. I mean, the Patriots lost to the Raiders in week 1. Come on.
We can't carve out every time the argument doesn't go your
way.
You
just go with you can. You go with the actual information. If Jayden had played poorly in week 1, I would have said he played poorly. If Jayden had played great in week 1, I would have said he played great, but it's also week 1. So week 1 is every year a head fake. You just have to go back to week 1 this year when the Vegas Raiders went to Foxborough and beat the Patriots.
We get it.
And Drake may look terrible.
So week 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So is week 2's excuse that it was a short week, or what's the excuse for week 2?
Yeah, there's context to everything, no doubt. There's context. He did not play well in week 2, though. He didn't play well, and nobody played well. You'd agree with that, right? You wouldn't put it on him. They were dominated up front. Dominated.
Yes. There were multiple players that played poorly, but when you are the best player, you take more of the glory and more of the responsibility. So I just want to fast forward to this week.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward to this week. We got Terry back. We got the entire offensive line playing. The only starter missing is who? Austin Eckler. So is there
he's been a big loss this year. We understand that, but we also understood the risk going into it. Well, you got to hurry up. I just looked at the clock. You got to hurry up. Go ahead, wrap it up.
I just want to ask, is there an excuse if he plays poorly this week?
I don't think so. No, that's why I'm excited. I'm excited to see him on the field with everybody because it hasn't happened since week 1. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to hear, oh, he's rusty because he if
he lights it up and they play well, are you going to call in and say you were right? He just needed good players around him. Okay.
Absolutely.
But you kind of understand that's a factor, right?
I think
you're looking for gotcha, and I'm just looking for, based on the assessment of what's happened, the reasons why. If the reason was he sucked, oh my God, he can't read defenses, he can't run, he can't do anything, he doesn't throw here, he doesn't. But that's just not reality. That's not what we saw. In fact, we saw him without Terry, but everybody else lighted up against the Chargers. He looked good against Chicago.
One good game. Yes.
Yeah. No, he played well against Chicago too, except for the turnover. All right, I got to go. When we come back, we'll go around the NFL. Big weekend. Max will help us as usual. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, we start off in Atlanta. They've got Seattle coming to town off that shutout win against a Max Brosmer-led Vikings team. Meanwhile, the Falcons suffered that 27-24 loss to the Jets on the walk-off field goal. Seattle favored by a touchdown. Over under 43.5. You got anything for this one, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I actually stay tuned for the smell test, but there's just overwhelming action on Seattle. Sam Darnold, we talked about this because in previewing Washington's game against Minnesota's defense, I didn't mention something. Sam Darnold had his worst QBR number of the season against Minnesota's defense last week, 18.3. There were just a barrage of pressures. They're gonna get after you. There's just no doubt about it. And Sam Darnold, as a quarterback against pressure, he's hit and miss. Some games you watch him and you're like, oh my God, he doesn't see it. He holds it, sack. What were there, 9 sacks in the playoff game against the Rams last year? I think it was. And then other times he does see it, but Darnold's going to face a lot of pressure against Raheem and Jeff Ulbricht's defense as well. The Falcons have surprisingly a decent, young pass rushing core. Remember, they traded for the opportunity to select
James Pierce.
the kid Lawrence, right? That's who they picked. Pierce Jr. Excuse me. After taking Jalen Walker early in the draft, but they traded back into the first round. They gave up next year's first round to take Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, and he's been really, really good. So there's a chance, believe it or not, for Atlanta's defense to shine here against Sam Darnold. The other thing I'll just tell you, because I've watched it, not live necessarily, but I've watched the condensed versions. Kirk's played well since replacing Penix Jr. He has protected the football. The last week they had the Jets dead to right at midfield, and he threw 3 balls, literally 3 in a row, that would have put him in field goal range to win the game in regulation. And no exaggeration, 2 of the 3 were just flat out drops, and the other one, Kyle Pitts should have pulled in. They've had some issues there. Drake London, I think, is out again. That's tough for them, but Bijan Robinson's special. Don't be surprised if the Falcons hang in there with the Seahawks, and this is a close game at the end. And I think if it happens, it'll be more because Atlanta's defense comes up big against Seattle's offense, more so than Atlanta does well against Seattle's defense. What's next?
Next up, we got the massive AFC North battle. Steelers heading to Baltimore. Rodgers back in this one for Pittsburgh, but the Ravens tad more rested off their Thanksgiving loss to the Bengals. Ravens currently have a 38% chance to make the playoffs out of the AFC North. Those odds improve to 52% with a win. The Steelers have a chance to improve their odds to 73% with a chance.
Can you imagine being in, the last week of your fantasy football season, having Lamar Jackson and saying, nah, I can't play him. I can't play Lamar Jackson.
He's playing the Steelers. Steelers are 5-3 against Lamar.
I forget about who they're playing. It's just Lamar's just not right.
Yeah,
he's just not right. I have no idea what to expect from this game. This is a battle between 2 teams sitting atop the AFC North with 6-6 records, and neither team's very good right now. The Ravens had this 5-game winning streak, but it really was fraudulent. It was Dolphins, Vikings, Browns, Jets. They play the Bengals and they get absolutely run out of their own building, and they turn the ball over a bunch of times last week. This game's at home. I would expect the Ravens to win this game, but man, I wouldn't feel good about it. They're not very good defensively. Pittsburgh's not very good defensively. Aaron Rodgers is banged up. Their offensive line isn't protecting very well. I do think the Steelers can run the football, and I think Baltimore can run the football a little bit as well. This will come down to turnovers, period. The team that makes the biggest and the most mistakes loses. And by the way, how many Steelers-Ravens games end up 16-13, 17-14, 13-10? It kind of feels like this one will come down to something like that, and it'll be a massive game. The loser's not done because they play again later in the year, and I think we've talked about this, but, Baltimore had that very favorable stretch. Now it's Steelers at Bengals with Burrow, Patriots, Packers, and at Steelers again. I'm telling you, this division could be won by a team with a losing record. 8-9 may do it. I mean, it's very possible. That's why you cannot, count out the Cincinnati Bengals yet. I have no feel for this game, man. I wish I'd like to watch this game. It's on the same time as our game. Not because it's going to be a great game, but just to see in a battle of bad teams in a bad division with still 5 left. Remember, the NFL season is dynamic, man, and it changes. The team you think sucks this week, 3 weeks from now, you're like, oh, my God, that's not the same team. We see that every year, especially this time, right? You see a team completely change, and all of a sudden they're a threat heading into the postseason. But I don't expect it with either one of these two teams right now.
Yeah.
TJ Watt's probably the best player on the field, right?
Almost certainly. I mean, if you want to say Lamar for the MVPs and the accolades, I understand, but not
he's
right
not
now.
Healthy.
Yeah, not right now. Absolutely. And
so
the Ravens are minus
TJ Watt's going to make a play, and it's going to decide the game. Yeah. What's next?
Next up, we got another AFC North team. Joe Burrow, fresh off that 261-yard, 2-touchdown performance in his return, leading the Bengals into Buffalo. Bills trying to hold on to their wild card spot. They currently hold the 7th seed, favored by 5.5 points is Buffalo. Over under 51.5. I think the Bengals are live in this one, but the chances Josh Allen could just score 6 touchdowns again are pretty high.
Cincinnati's defense has been a little bit better here.
It has.
In the last, it's kind of like Washington, like all of a sudden there's like a glimmer of hope that you're not as terrible as you've been. They were good against the Ravens. They forced, all those turnovers. They got stops on 3rd down. They forced punts. I think that's as much about Baltimore right now as it is about Cincinnati.
Sure.
But look, they were putting up points and yards with Flacco. They'll continue to do that with Burrow. Is T. Higgins back for this one or not?
Oh. I should know this.
They didn't need him against Baltimore. They'll need him in Buffalo. By the way, snow in the forecast for this one, cold, up in Orchard Park. You know who I've liked this guy for a while, but you know who I think is a very underrated back? It's the way I felt about Javonte Williams, but he just never got the opportunity because he was always hurt. And this guy to the same degree, Chase Brown's a good running back in this league. He really is a good running back. He's got a franchise record, 6 straight games with 100+ scrimmage yards for the Bengals. The only players with a longer streak in the past 5 years, Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. I think Cincinnati hangs in there. I think they got a shot. What's next?
Next up, we've got the future of the league, Kevin, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. A full point
We're really
separating.
Talk about this game.
Hey,
this is a battle of number 1 overall versus the guy that thought he should go number 1 overall, but didn't go until the 5th round.
Yeah.
Man, what is Myles Garrett going to do to Cam Ward?
I don't know, but I know it's not going to be good for Cam. That's for sure.
They're a bad football team.
Is he going to break the record?
Oh yeah, what this weekend?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's gonna
break the record. Unless he gets hurt. Could he do it with 5? What's the record again? I'm forgetting what it is. 26.
I gotta pull up the number. I think 26 is right.
And he's at 19 or 20.
Yeah,
he's having one of the great all-time defensive seasons. It's funny because you watch Will Anderson Jr. in Houston, and you're like, I know Garrett's better, but he may not be a lot better than Will Anderson Jr. But Garrett's just historically great. What is the sack record?
So the single season sack record is Strahan 22.5. Myles Garrett currently has 19 sacks.
Yeah, 22.5. Right, Strahan, of course, when Brett Favre gave it up to him.
Yes.
Yeah, he could easily do it. In fact, he probably will do it Sunday in Cleveland. Another weather game, cold, perhaps some snow showers during that game. Tell you a guy to keep an eye on, not Shedeur Sanders, but Quinshon Judkins, the 2nd round pick for Cleveland out of Ohio State at running back, has had an excellent season this year. On a terrible team, he's rushed for 758 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's good. What's next? Let's go to a real game.
All right. How about big AFC South matchup? Jags Colts, 2 teams I don't think will amount to much in the postseason, but they each hold a playoff spot right now. Jags can improve their odds to 96% with a win over the Colts, and the Colts can get their odds up to 85%, but they dropped down to 56 with a loss. Think about that. If I'd told you that at the beginning of the season when they were off to the hottest of starts. Colts favored by 1.5. Over under little 46.5, 47.5. It's around there. Who do you think makes it out of this one?
Yeah, 7-1 they were when they went to Pittsburgh and had all those turnovers. Daniel Jones's first bad game. Then they barely beat the Falcons in Berlin. I mean, they were lucky to win that game. Then they lost to the Chiefs in a game in which I thought they played well. They just couldn't get off the field defensively. And then last week was a real back at home, right after Arrowhead and Berlin and Pittsburgh. And Houston was not the opponent that they wanted to see at home. And they lost that one. So they've lost 3 of 4. Jacksonville, meantime, look, they played the Titans last week. They were lucky to survive the Cardinals the week before that. They played well, though, right at home. They beat the Chiefs at home. They blew out the Chargers at home. Man, this is a huge game in the AFC South. I think Houston's coming here. I think Houston's the best of the 3 teams, whether or not they got too far behind the 8 ball, because one of these 2 teams is going to end up 9-4. And by the way, Houston could leave Arrowhead 7-6. I think I like the Colts on the road a little bit.
Ooh.
Trevor, look, you know what Jacksonville has? Jacksonville's got some pass rushers, man.
They do.
Josh Hines-Allen can really get after the quarterback. Walker can really get after the quarterback.
I don't know if Daniel Jones can feel his legs.
Exactly. So you could see Jacksonville's defense taking over this game and forcing turnovers. Trevor Lawrence, though, gives them back, doesn't he? What's the deal with Trevor Lawrence? I think he's so talented. So talented.
It's like a switch flips in his brain. It just turns off. You're like, what are you doing, man? But
it's true. Yeah, I'll go with Indy. I'll go with Indy. I don't trust either one of these 2 teams right now. What's next?
Next up, we got the coaches coaching out of their way of getting fired bowl between the Dolphins and the Jets. Dolphins outdoors in December usually spells disaster, according to ProFootballNetwork.com. The Dolphins are 2-19 in their last 21 games with a kickoff temperature below 50 degrees. Should be 41 on Sunday in the Meadowlands. Dolphins are favored by 3 points, over under 41.5. What do you think, Kevin?
Do you know what the Jets are against the number over the last 5 weeks?
No, you got it.
5-0. ATS against the spread.
Give me that.
They've also got 3 wins in their last 5 games. They came back, remember, to beat Cincinnati as an underdog. They beat Cleveland as an underdog. They covered against New England as a big underdog. They covered against Baltimore, a game they were in going into the 4th quarter as a big underdog. And they won outright last week against Atlanta as a short underdog. They're a short underdog again. The Jets have flat out played better. In fact, both of these teams have played better recently. I mean, we saw Miami get things started with that win over Buffalo before they went to Madrid and beat us. Then they beat the Saints last week. Miami's not out of it at 5-7, and they play the Jets. They play then it gets rough. Yeah. Steelers, Bengals, Bucks, Patriots to finish. Give Mike McDaniel some credit. That team looked done when they went to Cleveland and got beat 31-6, earlier in the season. And he's coached them up. They've hung in there. They've won 4 of 5. I would expect them to make it 5 of 6, but the Jets have been feisty, especially at home. And like I said, they've been a covering machine here recently, and they've won. They've won their last 2 home games. And by the way, the other games that they lost they lost to the Panthers in a close game at home. They barely lost to the Broncos, remember, in London. So the Jets have definitely improved this year. I think it's enough to save Aaron Glenn. What's next?
I think it is too. All right, we got the final game of the 1:00 slate. The Bucs taking on Tyler Shucks Saints. Became the first Saints rookie ever to pass for 2+ touchdowns in multiple games in his rookie season. Meanwhile, the banged-up Bucs are starting to get healthier. Mike Evans returning to practice off the IR. Probably not going to go this week, but much sooner return from a broken clavicle than usual. But Tristan Wirfs was a surprise reveal on the injury report this week with a quad injury, so we'll see how that plays out. The Bucks, 8.5-point favorites. Over-under is 41.5. I kind of like the Saints here, Kevin. What do you think?
Well, the Saints are another team that, has been capable in some games. I think back to the game that they lost at home to the Bears, to the Patriots, or the Bears on the road, the Patriots at home. They were in that game against the Patriots. They beat the Panthers a few weeks ago on the road. They had a shot against Miami. It was a 2-point conversion down 19-17 to tie, and actually it got picked and run back for 2 points. And the Bucks have just kind of been hanging on, man. They had that losing streak, and then they barely hung on to beat the Cardinals at home last week. So not all's right with the Bucks either. I could easily see the Saints hanging in there and making this a game, for sure. Yes, that this is going to be a tougher game for Tampa than anticipated. And look, they're in a battle with Carolina in that NFC South. Carolina's a half game back. And I think I've mentioned this before, but Carolina and Tampa Bay, like Green Bay and Chicago, they play twice over the next 13 days. At the end of the year, the Bucks and the Panthers play twice over the final 2 weeks. That'll determine the NFC South. But yes, I can definitely see a tighter game than I think most people are intending to see. Shuck's been okay. Their defense, who is playing well this year? Another former player from our team, Chase Young, has 5 sacks on the year. He's got 5 additional TFLs. He's knocked down 3 or 4 passes. He's forced a fumble or 2. He hasn't played in every game because he was hurt early in the year. But Chase Young with Cam Jordan, they got a pass rush. Be nice to have Chase Young on the team right now for whatever New Orleans is paying him, which is not, it's not nothing, but it's certainly not anything long term. All right, you want to hit the later games when we come back?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll do that after these words from a few of our sponsors.
All right, next up, we got the Broncos heading into Vegas to face the Raiders. I really think that defense is going to have Geno Smith in hell, Kevin. If a team could score negative points, it would feel like it would be this game. Broncos -7.5, over under 40.5. The Raiders front's just going to get shredded by Nick Bonito. I don't see where the Raiders have any advantage here, Kevin. What do you got?
They played on Thursday night 3-4 weeks ago, whatever it was, and it was a 10-7 ugly game that Denver was kind of lucky to survive.
Yeah.
Now, I've talked about that game a couple of times leading into the game against Denver last week for our team. That was 4 nights after they faced Houston in what was just a physically, both teams got beat up football game, 18-15. So yeah, they're a little bit healthier. They got a little more rest. The game's in Vegas. It's not, in Denver. But I'll just point this one thing out to you. Zach Ertz the other night had 10 catches for 106 yards. Brock Bowers should be featured against Denver in this game. They got to simplify it. It's funny how these division matchups go, especially the second go-round, unless you're talking about the final 2 weeks of the season when people have checked out. It's not going to surprise me if this is a close game. Division games, sometimes the second round always are. If it is, it's because Geno Smith feeds Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers is great, if you don't know that. The problem with Denver is without J.K. Dobbins, they just haven't been able to run the football with R.J. Harvey or with McLaughlin. Dobbins was really big for that offense, and they have not been the same without him. So, I could see an ugly, 20-13 kind of game. The Raiders get a half-point cover. I could see that. Denver wins, though.
It's a lot of points for that game. Next up, we got a big NFC West fight at 425 in Arizona between the Rams and the Cardinals. LA looking for a bounce back win off that unexpected loss to Carolina. Meanwhile, the Cardinals are in free fall at 3-9. Very funny to say that when we're 3-9, but they have losses in their last 4. Rams favored by 8.5 points, over under 47.5. Cardinals defense is good, but are they stop Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams good? I don't think so.
Yeah, the Cardinals, the last 2 games have been feisty. They've been right there. They were there against the Jags, there against the Bucks, lost in overtime to Jacksonville, lost to the Bucks. They had the ball late, down 3 with a chance to tie. But the Rams coming off a loss, right? I mean, this is not a great spot for Arizona, even though they're at home. I think, the Rams, I still think they're the best team in the league. I think they are. I mean, every week, this league gives you another reason to reconsider everything you thought the week before. The Rams have to win this game. Now, will they cover? I would imagine there's a lot of action on the Rams. There is. I've given out Arizona a couple of weeks in a row, and it's been, 2 straight pushes. The Rams were 10-point favorites at Carolina last week. 10.
Crazy.
They lose outright. Got to get Kyron Williams going against Arizona. The Rams are too good defensively. This has to be the Rams by a whole lot to a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Next up, the premier 425 game from Lambeau. Bears-Packers, big-time playoff implications. In this one, the winner of this game improves their playoff odds to 90+%. Packers can get it up to 95, and the Bears to 92 with a loss. Packers drop to 76, and the Bears drop to a 69% chance of making the playoffs. Packers favored by 6.5. Over under 44.5. Kev, you're high on the pack right now, but Ben Johnson's got the Bears humming. What do you think?
By the way, how good has this division been the last 2 years? Remember last year you had Detroit at 15-2, Minnesota at 14-3, Green Bay at 11-6. The top 3 teams in the division. This year, you've got, the Bears at 9-3, the Packers at 8-3-1, the Lions at 8-5. And the Lions needed that win last night. The Lions still have the biggest point differential of the 3 teams. So to me, this comes down to, after what we saw last Friday in the Black Friday game at the Link in Philadelphia, can the Bears run the football against that stout defense? Green Bay's excellent against the run. They have been really good against good running teams. They shut down Gibbs, they shut down Barkley just in recent games in terms of yards per carry. if Chicago can't run the football, they've got no chance. Unless Jordan Love has a bad Jordan Love game. I like the Packers. I like the Packers, period, right now, the rest of the way. I think the Packers and the Rams. Look, Seattle's dangerous, but I would trust the coach. I would trust the quarterback in the Rams and the Packers situation more than the Seattle situation. I like the Packers at home. Frigid Lambeau, outdoors, 16 degrees at kickoff. If the Bears can run the football, though, and they proved it last week, I mean, they've got good backs. They've got a good offensive line. They scheme it up well. Ben Johnson's doing a phenomenal job. If they can run the football, look, when you run the football and you get takeaways, that is something that travels. So running the football travels. In that environment, if they can run the football, they got a really good chance. I'm going to predict the Packers are able to stop the run and put the game on Caleb, and that they end up winning and covering in this game, something like 24-14.
Ooh.
One more tight game, first to 2 over the next 13 days. Really, really intense environment, I would imagine, at Lambeau Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yeah. And one more thing on that environment. The Packers released a tweet last night. The tweet says, a limited number of tickets are available for Sunday's game due to the Bears returning a portion of their allotment. So it's going to be a lot of green and gold.
See, that's surprising to me because Bear fans travel.
Yeah.
And this is such a massive rivalry. I would have expected something different. So that's certainly a jab at the Bear fan base as well. But
of course,
look, I mean, if they go into Lambeau and win, we can officially call the Bears a contender and say, yeah, shorting them has not worked very well. But look, this is, Philadelphia was really the start of it, right? And they got that win, but they still have the Packers twice, the 49ers on the road, and the Lions at home to finish the season. You talk about some big NFC North matchups the rest of the way. This is the first of them. All right, what's next?
All right, I'm saving the best for last, Kevin. The NFL did too. Biggest game of the day on Sunday Night Football, at least for you and me, because I said the AFC champion is out of the playoff picture, and the winner of this game is probably going to be that team. Chiefs' chances dropped to 17% of making the playoffs with a loss and 49% with a win. Our Texans, we've adopted them, can reach an 89% chance of making the playoffs with a win, and Kansas City 45% with a loss. It is not over if they lose, but it does make the road a little bit tougher. Chiefs by 3.5, over under 41.5. What do you think? You think the Texans defense can make Mahomes look pedestrian, Kev?
I do.
I agree.
I really do. I think this could be kind of a feel of the end of the road for the 2025 Chiefs. Look, if they win, then you're going to say, all right, now they got the Chargers coming up next week at home. They finish with Titans, Broncos, Raiders. They could get to, 10-7, 11-6, something like that. But, the Texans and the Chiefs have played a lot, against each other. They played in the postseason last year. It was a tight game. Houston had a chance. The regular season at the end of last year, Houston had a chance but didn't get it done. You go back to 22 when they lost in overtime to the Chiefs. They played in the postseason all the way back in 2020, which was one of Mahomes's, first, big home playoff games. And it was like 17-0 Houston, and then Kansas City rolled off like 40-something unanswered. There's a little bit of history building up, but Houston hasn't beaten them in their last 5 tries. For me, the way I look at these things, like the 3.5 point spread worries me because I want Houston to win the game. If I had seen 2.5 all week, I would have said, very strongly Houston's winning this game. But the 3.5 is kind of sucking in some Houston action, taking the 3.5. It's kind of split. It's not going to be a smell test pick either way. But I'll tell you what, if Kansas City thinks they're going to drop Mahomes back a bunch against this defense, they're sorely mistaken. This is I think, the best defense in the NFL with the way they're playing right now. I know some statistics have, Cleveland and Denver for sure above Houston, but they have been lights out, and they've played some good, last week on the road at Indy, Buffalo the week before. I mean, they threw Josh Allen around all night like a rag doll. That was just impressive. They're rolling right now. This is a hell of a game Sunday night. Cold at Arrowhead, December football, both teams desperate for it. I personally feel like Houston in the postseason, this is crazy to say, but I think if Houston gets into the postseason, they're actually a bigger threat to win games and go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC than this particular version of the Chiefs are. With that said, there's still 5 games left, and Kansas City, we looked at this team at various points during the season and said they're actually better than they were last year, but they didn't win. They won the close games. They won the close games last year. They beat the Colts a few weeks ago, but then they lost to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. This is one Kansas City's got to get. Look, when in doubt, you go quarterback, and that's Mahomes over Stroud, even though I think he's better than most people, want to say he is. But, man, we are going to see – this is a hell of a matchup. This is sit-down, playoff-style, desperation football with a team that is playing as well defensively as we've seen any team in recent, vintage play. Philly at the end of last year looks like Philly at the end of last year right now. The Texans do. But it's Mahomes. I don't like the game either way. I'm rooting for Houston, but it's too hard to pick it.
So on the note of the Texans, it's going to be like line it up and go, because they have one of the lowest blitz rates in the league right now. And then
they don't need to blitz.
Exactly. They have 2 elite guys at edge. And then I think they're sitting at like 24% in disguise coverage rate as well, which is like bottom 4 in the league. So it's just line it up. We're going to be better than you. I guarantee it.
Yeah. I think D'Amico Ryans does a really good job. And look, they've got weapons on offense. It's too bad Mixon's not a part of this, team right now. And they may have lost the rookie Woody Marks last week. Is he out for this game?
Let me get it.
Because he got hurt in the Indy game.
Yeah, he did.
So that would be a bit of a loss too. And now you're down to Nick Chubb. Look, Chubb, when he was Chubb, was as good as anybody, but he's just not been that guy, even though he's been a capable player for sure. But God, this is a good football game. Is Marks in or not? They kind of need him.
DNP on Wednesday, no status update for Thursday, but it's an ankle injury, so I'm going to be cautious and say probably not.
Yeah. This is another one of those games like Stroud will put a couple up for grabs. He can't do this. You've got to, when you have a defense like they have, it's kind of like the way we've seen Jayden play at times. By the way, the way he played the Chiefs earlier in the year, that was a long time ago. But you can't lose the game on offense. And I think Stroud can do some things to help you win a game. Don't get me wrong. But you can't lose the game. Because if you punt, you put your defense back out onto the field, you got a chance to get the ball back pretty quickly. All right. We'll talk about the Monday night game on Monday. Eagles at Chargers. Another really important game in the NFL playoff race. All right. When we come back, I'll have my smell test picks ready to go. That's after this.
All right. Happy Friday, everybody. We start off with Thursday Night Football. The Cowboys belted by the Detroit Lions. Lions defense comes alive in the fourth quarter. 2 of their 5 sacks coming when it mattered most, as well as a late interception by DJ Reed to officially put the game on ice. The Lions win 44-30 over the Cowboys. Plus, Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy has cleared concussion protocol this week and will be available this weekend versus Washington. Dan Quinn will have news on Jayden Daniels' status later today. Keep it locked right here on the Team 980 as the presser unfolds in the 12 p.m. hour. We will have news for you as soon as that breaks. Tonight, Red Hot Caps, they're riding a 6-game win streak into a late-night matchup in Anaheim against the Ducks. Logan Thompson expected to be in net for this one. 10 p.m. puck drop over on 106.7 The Fan. Pre-game set to get rolling at 9:45 just after Linnell Willingham wraps up his overtime show. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, last week was the first week all season long where I did not have a winning record or at least a 500 record. There were 2 weeks of the 13 that had 500 records. The other 11 were winning records. And for the season, I'm 91, 55, and 11. Pretty good. 36 units plus, 36 above 500. And last week was 4-5-1. It wasn't a disastrous week. It was 4-5-1. But thank you, Gary, for the kind note where you texted me, and I know Gary, on Saturday night saying, I'll never take your college picks again. 0-3 last week, college picks. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry about the first 12, 13 weeks of the season. Unless you just jumped on the picks, I can't help you with timing. Look, I'm going to walk you to the window here. You do what you want to do, and it's big boy pants on, when you do this. I'm not here talking to $5 bettors for the most part, all due respect. And that's what Gary is. I basically offered him 100 to keep his mouth shut and never text me again. All right, 4-5-1 last week, 91, 55, and 11 on the season. I always find championship Saturday to be tough, and even Friday night. There's nothing I like tonight. Kind of would lean UNLV, but I'm off that game. That's not an official play. Interesting games, though. Like the North Texas Tulane game should be a good game tonight. Tulane's pretty good, pretty well coached. North Texas can really score. That total is like 67.5 or something like that. That game could easily be, 52-45. But tomorrow, there are a couple of games that stick out like a sore thumb. We'll start with Bama, Georgia. The public action's heavy on Georgia in this one, laying 2.5, 3. There are some threes out there. There are mostly 2.5s. Bama won the first meeting between the two in Athens, and that's a huge game for Bama this year. Going to Georgia 24-21 back at the end of September and winning that game. And everybody thinks Georgia's a better team now than they were, which is true. And Bama's not as good. Bama lucky to survive Auburn. They lost to Oklahoma a few weeks ago. They had a tough game against LSU. Georgia, just so everybody understands, they played an odd game last Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, against Georgia Tech, a game in which the total was at 60, the final score was 16-9. I mean, teams have been rolling up massive points against Georgia Tech, and Georgia couldn't. They won the game. The public likes Georgia, giving what they appear to be, appears to them to be a short number. I'll take Bama plus the 3. Whether you have to buy the half point or you can find the 3, there's some 3s out there. I'll take Bama plus the 3 in the SEC title game to sweep Georgia, and also to put to bed any of the conversation that Bama, if they get blown out, that they're not going to be in the field. If they took Bama out of the field, if they got blown out by Georgia, you'd see teams opt out of conference championship games in the future. Duke plus 4 in the ACC title game in Charlotte against UVA. This line is short. They met just a few weeks ago, and Virginia blew them out 34-17. Duke's got a very good quarterback, and Duke's capable. This is going to mess things up if they win the game outright. What worries me about this is just, will the officiating, will there be some suspicious officiating in a game in which the ACC, if Duke wins, is going to get shut out of the playoff more likely than not.
So that's the thing about the ACC, though, Kevin. They've been incredibly transparent with their replay booths and all of it. So
they have been.
So we'll kind of see. We're going to get.
You're not going to get a replay
look
on a phantom holding call, though.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
I'm taking the team that everybody in the ACC that has anything to do with the ACC does not want to see win the game. Give me Duke plus the 4.
Woo-hoo.
I actually think in many ways, even though they lost to UVA, I think they're just as good as UVA. And then in the Big Ten title game, the public's all over the Buckeyes laying what appears to be a short number against Indiana. I don't think it should be. I don't think it should appear as a short number at 4. But I think a lot of people think Ohio State is just Ohio State and Indiana is somehow Indiana. Let me tell you about Indiana. They're good on defense, too. As good as they are on offense, they're really good on defense. And I think this nerd, genius, insufferable to listen to him speak, head coach Curt Cignetti at Indiana, I think he wants to show everybody this ain't your little old Indiana, even though they went to the playoff last year. Like a Big Ten title for Indiana, a basketball school against Ohio State. And I'll tell you all year long, man, Ohio State, I don't know. Defensively, yes. We'll see. I'm taking Indiana plus the 4. All 3 of those big public going against public sides. Let's go to Sunday where there are big games. I only have action in one of the important games, of course. By the way, the Washington-Minnesota game is very split. If anything, there's more action on Minnesota in some books, but it's kind of split across the board based on the information I have. So we've already talked about this game. Most people think that Atlanta stinks, and they're not good. I'm not telling you they're good, but Seattle and that defense against Kirk Cousins and that offense without Drake London, Seattle laying 7 appears to be a very enticing number. They're a major public play. I'll take the Falcons plus the 7. By the way, Seattle's won 6 of 7. They've covered in 6 of their last 7. So they've done bettors well. Maybe it ends this week with, another kind of walk-off win against the Falcons. And then we get to the late afternoon games. Let me give you the bad team first that I'm going to give you. How about Vegas plus 7.5 against Denver? The public's all over Denver. And by the way, after a 10-7 game that they played a few weeks ago, the public loves the under in this game. It's at 40. I'll go over the 40, Vegas, Denver. So plus the 7.5 with the Raiders and over 40 in that game. And then the public all of a sudden likes Chicago after what they did last week against Philly. And they think 7 points is a lot of points. There's a lot of 6.5s out there. But there are actually, you know what? I'm laying 6.5. It's almost all 6.5s now. I'm looking at 7 different sports books right now. They're all at 6.5. There's 1 minus 7. 1 minus 7. So I'm laying the 6.5 with Green Bay against the public favorite, the public dog in this one, Chicago. That's it. Saturday, Alabama plus 3. And then Duke plus 4 and Indiana plus 4. On Sunday, the Falcons plus 7, the Raiders plus 7.5, the over 40 in the Raiders-Denver game, and then Green Bay laying 6.5 against the Bears. Yeah, maybe the correction started last week. We'll see. Enjoy the football this weekend. We'll talk to Ben Standig next. Ben Standing is still standing, and he's with us every Friday at 12, every Monday at 12 as well. They're getting ready to practice. They're getting ready to perhaps tell us about the quarterback, right? Dan Quinn's scheduled to speak maybe in the next 15 minutes. I know you're going to have to run pretty quickly here, but what are we going to hear from him today?
Yeah, I think we're going to hear that Jayden Daniels will start in Minnesota. I mean, unless there was some sort of tweak today or some kind of concern that we're not aware of, it looks like he's going to make his return after 3 games against the Vikings. And needless to say, you know, whatever the season has obviously gone as sideways as possible, but the hope has got to be with him back, with Terry McLaurin back. It looks like Noah Brown could also make his return this week. It looks like he will, you know, for the first time really since like week 2. They're going to have essentially their full starting offensive lineup on the field together. And, you know, I think you got to just hope that these last 5 games, they show enough positive momentum that, hey, you know, the staff can feel pretty good about this group going forward after what's obviously been a frustrating season, and you know, get a jump start on what their thoughts are going to be for next year. So looks positive from that perspective. And, you know, I can't imagine that they're putting him out there if there's any concern of injury. So you have to believe that he's, you know, good to go.
You know, I thought there was an interesting Cliff Kingsbury is generally very positive about the players, you know, in his presser every Thursday. But he said about Noah Brown's impact on the offense yesterday, he said he's a huge part of it, no doubt. His physicality, route running, he's a super talented player. He's a guy that can really run any type of route, play inside, play outside, knowledge of the system. He really, like, I'm not sure most fans and even many of us realize the importance they believe Noah Brown plays in their offense. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I think it's sort of got to be kind of realistic about the whole situation. I mean, let's not forget last year when he was cut by the Texans, and immediately the thought was, oh, well, if you bring in Noah Brown, he could be this team's number 2 receiver, which says something about the state of the receiver room last year. If a guy who's just getting cut is that right? And so he came in, it was certainly effective. And they've missed his size. They missed that kind of, you know, guy who can make some plays down the field opposite McLaurin, who obviously missed most of the season. I think it's just that without him, as we saw, they just did not have any other kind of viable option at all. So certainly at a minimum, they missed him because they didn't have the depth to replace him. And at a maximum, you know, he gives them certain elements to complement McLaurin and would have complemented Deebo Samuel, I think. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know how much time we'll spend saying they've got to bring Noah Brown back this offseason, but at the same point, they have if he does go, you know, there's something there to replace. He's not just a random part. He was somebody that was, you know, pretty helpful last year.
I think they view him, and maybe part of this is reflected in the number of pass interference penalties he draws, but I think they view him as a savvy receiver. That's the description I would use. Is that an accurate one or not?
I lost you for a second. What was the description?
I think they view him as a savvy receiver.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, he's a guy whose unfortunate injuries have just kind of wrecked his whole career, not just this season, but that's been the deal. And when he's played, he, you know, and for stretches at a time, he's been pretty productive. And yeah, he can help you in a lot of different ways. You know, we talked about it last year that at the time of his injury, he was leading the league in pass interference penalties drawn, which, you know, it doesn't go up on the back of the football card stats, but it is a pretty significant one, and it shows the ability to get open, create advantages that the defenses are going to have to, you know, account for. So yeah, I mean, I think savvy is a fair word for sure. And you know, again, I had zero problem with them bringing him back this year because of what he did last year, because of the skill set that he provides. It's just, you know, a bummer that he got hurt. But yeah, no, I think all that's fair. And, you know, again, I think for the first time, you know, really, you know, even back in week 2, right? I mean, Noah Brown had missed all of training camp. Terry McLaurin had missed all of training camp. So it wasn't even just like, well, they were really ready to go in week 2. They were just still sort of finding their sea legs, as it were, and then they got taken out. So he obviously has missed weeks and weeks and weeks now. So we'll see where he's at physically, and if he's able to get full reps or things along those lines. McLaurin, even last week, as good as he looked, he, you know, kind of acknowledged, hey, I wasn't at full full tilt just yet
Right.
because of working his way back. So maybe it'll take another week or so.
Well, he was on a pitch count last week. I think he exceeded it, but he was on a pitch count.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so maybe it'll take another game or two for everybody, including maybe Jayden to some degree, to feel like like they want. But the fact that they're going to hopefully everybody stays healthy the rest of the way, get to see this group and Noah Brown included. What this group can look like.
What have we learned about Dan Quinn as the play caller the last 2 weeks? And by the way, does it have staying power? Meaning, is it possible that he takes it over next year?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a little tricky to kind of figure out what his impact has been. Certainly, it's been noted that they've played a lot more zone defense these last two games, but I think that might have happened regardless. Like, I don't imagine that Joe Witt was being stubborn to it, but they've lost their two outside cornerbacks and Marshawn Lattimore and Trey Amos to injuries. Taking those guys off the field and replacing them with smaller corners and Mikey Sanderstill and Jonathan Jones kind of took away what Quinn's preferred press man coverage. They couldn't really do that with those smaller guys. So they've gone to this more zone, and I think that's helped them be a little more cohesive in kind of what they're doing out there. Look, it's not all perfect, of course, but there's fewer obvious mistakes. The mistakes now are just more on the talent level as opposed to the execution level, and that's huge because they were getting beat over and over again with busted coverages and things like that. There was still one last week with Cortland Sutton on a 3rd and long, getting open for 31 yards. But regardless, I think they've done a better job there, and I think that's, to me, the biggest thing. I don't know that they've gotten better, but they are not fewer self-inflicted wounds. And that's not nothing, but that's been better. Now, whether that's because Dan Quinn hit some magical play call button or the guys in defense now with the head coach directly supervising them or more on their P's and Q's, hard to say. But, yeah, it's been better, but I don't know that it's necessarily better, if you know what I mean. And as far as, I asked him about this last week in terms of the play calling going forward. And he said it's definitely a possibility. I just think it's going to have to be – he's going to have to decide, is he willing to sort of go against his own philosophy that I want to delegate more, that I want to be more of that overall CEO and have a hand in the defense. Of course, that's his side of the ball. That's going to be, the question. And, not only that, but if he goes outside to find somebody else to call plays, what is that going to be? Is that person going to be essentially calling Dan Quinn's defense but just – a different human being, or is he willing to, maybe even look at a new philosophy? That's going to be what's interesting to me.
All right. Last one. I know you got to run. With Jayden on Sunday, let's assume he starts. Mm-hmm. Will they hold back on anything?
I mean, the whole point Dan Quinn has said repeatedly is we want him to be out there to express himself, essentially, right? To do what he can do. To me, I don't know if the play calling will change a ton. I mean, maybe Cliff Kingsbury dials down the number of read options or things along those lines. What I think is important is we talk about the physical. I think the mental for Jayden Daniels is what's going to be key, not just now, but going forward. Can he dial back the level of competitiveness that exposes his body to all these hits? He's absorbed more hits, basically over the last 2 seasons than any quarterback. Maybe that's not completely accurate now because he's missed so many games, but that's where he was headed. Obviously, is that sustainable? I mean, based on the first 2 years, I think that question is very, up in doubt. So for me, it's the mentality thing. Nobody's saying stay in the pocket, never move. But at the same point, the best asset he has ultimately isn't his pocket passing and it isn't his running, it's his availability. And that changes the trajectory of this organization. So whether that's play calling or his mentality, something ultimately has to give. And look, these 5 games, considering the playoffs are, essentially out of the conversation, this is a good opportunity to practice those habits, and we'll see if he can do that, if he can adjust his mindset, and if they adjust their play calling to help him out in that regard.
All right. I know you got to run. You got a prediction real quickly?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to say a team that's lost 7 in a row is going to win, but I think this is the chance to do it. I mean, again, with Minnesota's got pieces on offense, and their defense. I heard you talking earlier about how they made Sam Darnold look like last week. Their defense is very, very good, but Minnesota's offense has been a mess. JJ McCarthy's going to play, and it's been obvious that he's just not been ready for this opportunity. Throwing mechanics are off, things like that. So I think this is a chance for Washington to get this done. We saw what the offense did last week against Denver. A similar performance, or just simply a one that's productive. I think as long as their defense doesn't revert back to what we saw during the worst part of the 7-game losing streak, I think Washington gets this done, something along the lines of 20-17.
Yeah, like the Wizards' defense regressed back last night. Jesus. I mean, 146 points. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Yeah, man, thanks.
Dan Quinn is scheduled to address the media here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So we're going to break now, come back to try to carry it live. Jordan DeJohnny from CBS Sports will join us before this hour is up. We'll have our predictions for Sunday as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, Dan Quinn is stepping to the podium out in Ashburn. Well, let's find out if we get information on Jayden Daniels. Let's head out there, Max.
All right, we can get rocking with our Friday program. I thought I'd hitch on the captains, who we had, and on offense, it's going to be Sam Cosme. I thought, man, there's been a lot of unseen work of the injury from last January to everything put in to getting right back through it. So I just thought, man, line of scrimmage day, and Sam's going to be a big part of that. I thought even into last week, probably his best game. And so you expect that from somebody coming off an injury. And I thought defensively, Will Harris. And, man, he brings a lot to our building, not just the player, but who he is as the communicator. And so, again, a lot of unseen work that goes into faces of guys injured before returning to play. And then the other person on special teams, just in the Jeremy McNichol, humility, dependability, and when we need something done, like J Mac, like he's going to find a way, he's going to get it done, and so there's deals. I specifically brought him up just oftentimes when there's a play to be made, whether it's on offense or on teams. J Mac's usually somehow involved in some of these plays, a block, a big play on a down, the right read, just those conversions. It's such a big deal. We talked a lot over the last few months about standards, and we continue to push and chase that. And I like to think if you walked into yesterday's practice or today's, you wouldn't know what our team's record was. And the effort, the intensity, that's not something that we're looking to show up on Sunday. That's got to be every day. And says everything about our group, that they continue to put into that work to get ourselves ready to play. So, that's what I was looking for from them. And so that's going to be the case in a series of weeks leading ahead of these types of practices. So no doubt it'll pay dividends for us over the game. So thought Jayden threw a great week of practice. He was full Thursday, full today. He's been cleared to play, and he will start Sunday. See how I buried the lead right there, John? You like that? Yeah. I was just trying to go so long and wait it out. Yeah, I saw you getting ready. So, but he really threw a great week, you guys. And like the other players, when you're injured, there's a lot of work that has to go back to it. I thought Jayden and the medical team put in many hours behind the scenes to get ready, from treatment to rehab to specific brace to all of it. And that's what it takes, when you're, finding your space to get back. And so just gratitude for everybody, pulling the same space. Everybody here's aligned and how we want to get things done. So that was a good deal. Anyway. Yeah.
When was it that you really felt really good about this?
I felt good going into the practice through Wednesday, just by the way he threw the ball, and that kind of carried over into yesterday. And then after they did a lot of the post-practice work, contact and that, the throwing part, you can tell he's been on that, not just this week, the throwing part, he's been on that the whole time. So that looked as sharp as ever. So I thought that part would come. But we wanted to see everybody around him, with the game plan of how it would work. So I thought just the whole week, John, he threw a hell of a week.
Why or how important is it for him to get back out there just to finish out this season?
Yeah, it's really important for him, for his teammates, for for any of the guys, honestly. And looking into it with 5 games, that's 30% of our season. There's a lot. All of these matter. And as he's developing, there's certain things he's working on too to go ahead and be as competitive as hell, and taking care of things that he can. And so it's really important, John. And so as the process for that begins, we're ready to get rolling with that. Yep. So Bobby, I thought had a really good practice today. No surprise. I wasn't surprised that he would. And, coming back from an injury, there's literally nobody tougher. He just wills himself into that. A lot of it's his discipline, how hard he works at things in his training. So there's carryover where he's stronger than the, average dude. He's definitely built differently. So I'm encouraged for him. And then Noah had a planned day today where we rest him, and he's had also a really good week, Nikki. So we'll do all the transactions and such tomorrow, but he threw a really good week too.
The expectation that he will play.
That would be the expectation. Like I said, we'll have the transactions and meetings tomorrow, but he threw a really good week.
Coach. The last 2 weeks in games and in practice, what are some of the little things that you're starting to see on this team, particularly in the secondary?
It's a good question. What I think, Don, I've seen is
so that was Dan Quinn giving everybody the announcement that Jayden Daniels will start Sunday in Minnesota. It's been ultimately it will have been 5 weeks in total since the last time he played. He played against the Seattle Seahawks back on November 3rd. So we're basically a month later, the 5th game since that game, and it was always going to be in that general neighborhood. Missed 3 games in total over 4 weeks. So missed 4 weeks of play back for week 5 to play Minnesota. I'm excited about it. You heard what Dan Quinn said. We've got 30% of the season left, nearly 30% of it left. Your starting quarterback doesn't sit on December 5th with 5 games left in the season. That's just not the way it works. And there are so many reasons. We've gone through them ad nauseum over the last couple of weeks, but you want to see a second-year quarterback have a second season as a second-year quarterback. He hasn't had a season this year. You want him to get the reps. You want him to be out there playing. I do wonder, I wonder if Robbie Chosen and Tay Martin and Jacoby Jones and Ja'Cory Smith or Harris or whatever his name is, I wonder if those guys were the guys that were still going to be out on the field. I wonder if they would have waited a week for Jayden to come back with some of the starters, maybe. But it's perfectly timed up with the healthiest they will have been since week 1. With Terry, with Debo healthy, with Noah Brown, with an offensive line that's advanced, matured, and is better than it was in week 1 and in week 2, clearly, in part because Sam Cosmi didn't play in the first 6 weeks of the season. And now Cosmi's played several games in a row and by the way, has played at a high level here recently. You've got a running back situation that has become more clear in terms of, who's going to get those lead back carries. It makes sense and makes sense to me. I still think that first and foremost, you can't put him at risk when the game is over at the end of a game, like we've seen twice during his career, the Seattle game and the Tampa Bay game last year. Number 2 is it'd be nice to see them cut back on some of the designed runs. I don't think you take the option runs out of the offense. I don't think you do that. I don't think there's a reason to take the option runs out of the offense. I think it's a part of what they do, and I think in many ways they're protective plays if he handles them the right way. And you can't say, hey, dump it, get out of there, and throw it away. We don't want you scrambling. No, this is who he is. I'm excited to see what it looks like Monday against an excellent defensive football team like they played last week with Marcus Mariota and Terry back in the lineup and Debo healthy in the lineup. Looking forward to it. Very excited about it. I think we knew this was coming. Certainly yesterday, we knew this was coming. And we'll get a chance to, sit down and watch a game where, I don't know, not that the Broncos and Dolphins games weren't good football games, entertaining games, 2 overtime games, but it's like we're watching what, in part what we're going to have next year. Certainly along the offensive line, certainly what we're going to have a quarterback at wide receiver, with Terry certainly back. Debo's a question mark, of course. Be interesting to see Treylon Burks and Jayden play together. I don't think they have. Or if they did, it was the 3 days after Burks arrived for the Seattle game. And so, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. Jordan DeJohnny from CBS Sports is going to jump on with us in about 10, 12 minutes. I wanted to just, we talked about Jacoby yesterday's show or the day before. I forget. Was it the day before, Wednesday, when we found out that he was not inducted into the Hall of Fame, that he didn't make the finalist list for the senior path? It was Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, and L.C. Greenwood. I got a bunch of feedback, and it's interesting to me. I think, longtime Redskin fans think Jake belongs in the Hall of Fame. Maybe slightly younger fans who are into football think they look at his resume and they see 4 Pro Bowls, they see 2 first-team All-Pros, and they're like, I don't get it. What are you talking about? He shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I said something the other day. I said, that the 4 tackles on the NFL All-Decade team are Anthony Munoz, who's flat out one of the greatest to ever play. Of course, he's in the Hall of Fame. But the other 3 tackles from the All-Decade team in the 1980s are Gary Zimmerman, Jimbo Covert, and Joe Jacoby. And Gary Zimmerman's in the Hall of Fame, and Jimbo Covert's in the Hall of Fame. And Jake is not. And we didn't talk a lot about it the other day, but I said it's another disappointment for Jake. Those of us who are, longtime, diehard Skins fans, and for a few of us that have gotten to know Jake over the years, this would be a wonderful honor. But I think it's not about him being a great guy. It's about him being one of the best of his era, which he was one of the best of his era. And I think I honed in on something the other day that I want to emphasize even more, and that is there are tackles in the Hall of Fame that don't deserve to be there more than Jake does. If we wanted to have the larger conversation about, look, they're letting in basically great players, not all-time great players, or they're letting in really good players, not just the greatest anymore. And that's certainly a fair conversation about a lot of players. I mean, there are players, former Redskins, who I don't think are Hall of Famers. I think they were great players, but it's harder to make a case for them into the Hall of Fame. We've talked about those players. Larry Brown. Larry Brown's career was just too short. He had one MVP season, and he was a really good back for about 3 or 4 years, but it was just too short. And it wasn't Gale Sayers' brilliance short. Guys like Gary Clark. You can actually make a really good case for Gary Clark. If Gary Clark didn't have some of his career numbers in the USFL, Gary Clark might be in the Hall of Fame had he played all of his years in the NFL. Brian's always a difficult conversation because I think Brian has a case, no doubt. But the first returner in Hester was just let in, and Hester is without a doubt the greatest and deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. Brian was never the best like Hester was over a long period of time, but Brian's accumulated numbers, still second all-time all-purpose yards, makes him a candidate. And I think Devin Hester getting in will give Brian a better chance. London, you can make the case, but London was more of an Iron Man more than anything else. He was never the best middle linebacker in the game when he played. He was among the very good ones in the game. It's Jake that really has the compelling case. Jake, when you compare him especially to Jimbo Covert, look, Gary Zimmerman, who's in the Hall of Fame, I promise you, there weren't people saying in the 80s or into the early 90s, wow, that Gary Zimmerman, he's much better than Jacoby. No, Jacoby was a more known dominant left tackle during his era. Now, part of it is because they won a lot more and because he was a part of the Hogs, which was an iconic, famous unit. And part of it is just the fact that Jake played in a lot more games in the postseason and many more important games. Zimmerman's career is more accolade driven. He's got more Pro Bowls. He's got more All-Pros. By the way, he's a member of the All-90s decade team as well. So I'm not going to pick on that. Although I will tell you, during that era, I don't think I ever felt like Gary Zimmerman was better than Joe Jacoby. But his resume speaks to a better case, I guess. But Jimbo Covert, man, come on. Like, if you want to say Jake shouldn't be there, then at least make sure to tell me that Jimbo Covert shouldn't be there. Jimbo Covert, 2 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros. Okay, Jake, 4 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros. Jake played 10 more. Jake had a second career in the postseason. He played 21 playoff games, started in 19 of them. That doesn't count towards Pro Bowls and All Pros. Those are regular season awards. Jake basically not only had a second career in the postseason because they were in it virtually every year, he was a big part of why they were in it. He was a big part of why they won 3 Super Bowls and went to 4. 2 of the all-time 3 rushing performances in Super Bowl history. Timmy Smith, number 1, 204 yards. John Riggins, number 3, 166 yards in Super Bowl 17. In between those two, by the way, Marcus Allen against Washington in Super Bowl 18. 2 of the 3 greatest individual rushing performances in Super Bowl history, led by an incredible offensive line, led by Joe Jacoby. Okay, are Redskins rusher performances. The postseason part of this is the part that whoever's making the pitch for Jake should make more prominent, because he had almost a season and a half of games in the postseason in which his team advanced to the Super Bowl 4 times and won 3 of them, led by the offensive line, which he was the most prominent part of. Now, in 91, he wasn't the most prominent part of the offensive line. That's fair, but he was a part of it. But certainly in 82 and in 83 and in 87, I mean, the rushing performance, the offensive performance, the pass protection, the rushing performance, in those Super Bowls and in the playoffs leading up to it, led by the Hogs and Joe Jacoby. It's not something. Jimbo Covert was part of the 85 Bears. They had one of the great seasons in NFL history because of their defense, not Jimbo Covert in the offensive line. I mean, it was a good offense. Walter Payton, Jim McMahon, Willie Gault, etc., McKinnon, but they were led by their defense. Washington was led by the Hogs and their run game and Jacoby. LT didn't say Jimbo Covert was the most difficult left tackle I had to face. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But he said that about Joe Jacoby. The greatest defensive player, in my opinion, I've ever seen. The greatest football player I've ever watched during my lifetime of watching football, Lawrence Taylor, thinks Jake deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. They have that approximate value description on Pro Football Reference. It's a number that, again, essentially gets assigned to players to identify their overall value relative to others at their position. Jake's got 2 AV seasons that are better than any Zimmerman or Covert had. So if you want to tell me Covert doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame and therefore Jake doesn't, or Rayfield Wright doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, or Dan Deerdorf doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, fine. But don't tell me that Jake doesn't deserve to be in there as much as Jimbo Covert or Dan Deerdorf or Rayfield Wright. Okay? He does. Talk to Jordan Dejani from CBS Sports next. Really good week 14 coming up. Our game at 1 o'clock. Jayden Daniels will start. If you're just joining us, Dan Quinn announced that about 15 minutes ago. Jayden will start Sunday. Noah Brown expected back. The full allotment for the first time really this year on offense, especially when you consider the offensive line is also healthier going in comparison to what it was earlier in the year. Joining us right now from CBS Sports is Jordan Dajani at Jordan Dajani on X on Twitter. Man, this has been a wild NFL season. I don't think I've talked to you since before the season began. I mean, you've covered a lot of them. I've been around for a lot of them as well. New England and Denver, maybe the top 2 seeds in the AFC. Chicago, Carolina could win the NFC South. It's been a wild year. What do you make of it?
What I make of it is I have no idea what's going on. I don't know which teams to trust, Kevin. And this is the first time in NFL history where we have 5 different divisions that have a lead under 1 game this late in the season. I mean, wow. This is one of the best NFL playoff races in league history, and no one knows which teams are good. I think there's 10 teams with 20-1 or shorter Super Bowl odds, which are the most through week 13 since 2010. So, yeah, it's really tough to make heads or tails of some of these teams. You know, we can talk about the New England Patriots. Are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender? What about the Philadelphia Eagles? Who's going to win the AFC North? It really just sets up for some awesome football watching down the stretch.
Yeah, it really does. I've been talking about it all week because, unfortunately, our team's not a part of it, and we thought it would be before the season started. But, look, we've gotten used to seasons of being out of it in December, and I can enjoy the rest of the NFL season. So it's hard to make a lot out of it and make heads and tails out of it as well, but let's try to do that. Let's start in the AFC. Give me the teams that, you know, right now are in solid playoff position that you do believe in.
I mean, let's start off with, I think, the team that's the number 1 seed in the conference, the New England Patriots. You know, at face value, if you were to ask me, do you trust them as a Super Bowl contender, I'd almost lean no, but you look at the rest of the teams in the AFC, and I say I might like the Patriots actually at number 1. I mean, Drake May is the front runner to win MVP. He's had an incredible campaign, leading the NFL in completion percentage, passing yards, passer rating entering this week. He's just the 5th second-year quarterback to win 10 straight starts, and the previous 4 all won NFL MVP and or a Super Bowl during their careers. We're talking about
the other
John
4?
Elway.
Who are the other 4?
John Elway, Dan Marino, Peyton Manning, and Lamar Jackson. That's the kind of season that Drake May is having right now. But here's the kicker. We all understand the Patriots have played the easiest schedule in the NFL. Like, what is their key victory? It's probably beating the Bills in Buffalo in week 5, but this Bills team doesn't look like a legitimate contender. They lost games to the Falcons, the Dolphins, the Texans, and the Patriots themselves. They played some close games against teams like the Saints, the Bengals, and the Falcons as well. So I would say that Monday's win over the Giants kind of felt like New England's first dominant victory since maybe week 8 against the Cleveland Browns. And when we're talking about Super Bowl contenders, you want those teams to go out there and beat teams like the New York Giants by double digits. So that's what New England did. Real quickly, the other team that I'm kind of focused on is the Denver Broncos. They have the backing of one of the best defenses in the NFL. And they've been kind of a fascinating team to watch this year because offensively, they've struggled. And a lot of people go out there and say, it's Bo Nix. He's having a sophomore slump. I don't like what I'm seeing out of him. I think the issues are a bit deeper than that. I'm seeing the wide receivers drop balls. I'm seeing Sean Payton have some really questionable play calling instances as well. But the Broncos have gotten it together. They played a great game against Washington, which I'm sure you guys watched. But the Broncos are definitely going to be in the running for that number 1 seed in the AFC. And just looking at how this conference has lined up, the Broncos are definitely going to be right there in the mix.
Yeah, you know, I think they missed J.K. Dobbins a lot. He was having a really, really good season and has been out the last 2 games. But, yeah, I mean, it's like New England, number 1 seed in the AFC, Chicago, the number 1 seed in the NFC. Before we move to the NFC, give me a team right now that you think is dangerous if they get in.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a team that I'm really interested in, but I don't know if I want to qualify it as they might be dangerous for a Super Bowl run if they get in, but this is probably my best answer. It's the 7-5 Houston Texans. They are on a 4-game win streak right now. Each of those wins have come by 7 points or fewer. In fact, I think Houston's actually 7-2 in its last 9 games, and they did it with 2 different quarterbacks, Davis Mills and C.J. Stroud. We know that Houston's calling card is this defense. They have the number 1 scoring defense and the number 1 total defense this season. No team in the Super Bowl era has ever missed the playoffs having the number 1 scoring defense and the number 1 total defense. So they have that strong backbone there. But when it comes to the offense, I watched C.J. Stroud pretty closely in his return to the lineup against the Colts this past week. I was kind of expecting it to be a bit disastrous. I didn't like what I saw at C.J. Stroud to begin the year, but it wasn't disastrous. Sure, he made a couple of bad plays, but I thought he made some pretty good throws as well. And, if we ignore the quarterback for a second, I think that offensively, Houston has kind of improved over the past few weeks. I like what I'm seeing out of Woody Marks. We're seeing the emergence of some of these young pass catchers as well. So I look at the Texans defense and I say, hypothetically, if this offense can play better than they did to begin the year, that Texans team is not one I would want to face.
Yeah, you nailed it for me too. I've been the last couple of weeks. I put a wager on them at 30-1 to win the AFC Championship. I think 3.5-4 weeks ago. I do have a question about them. Do you think Joe Mixon comes back and plays? Because that would be a massive add if they got him back.
I'm not 100% sure. I remember going into this season, I heard some noise that, maybe he's not going to play this year. And sure enough, we saw reports surface not long ago, actually, that he was probably not going to suit up this week. I think he came out and tried to refute those reports. But, even if he does, you have to wonder about a running back being in football shape after taking that much time off. So I think it's a good question, but I would lean probably towards that being a bit unlikely.
Great game Sunday night. I mean, the desperation for both of these teams at Arrowhead. What is your feel about Kansas City and the chance that they can turn it around here over the final 5 games?
My confidence in the Chiefs is waning, and I don't want this to be like another year where I give up on the Chiefs and all of a sudden they make this run and end up winning the AFC. But I don't think that's going to happen this time around, right? According to our metrics, they have a 37.8% chance to make the playoffs. It's the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era that our metrics have them under 50% of making the postseason. And they have a 16% chance to win out as well, which I do think is possible because they got the Texans, as you mentioned. They got the Chargers. They got the lowly Tennessee Titans and the Broncos and the Raiders. So it's possible they do win out, but I still think that it's going to be a tough ask. This Chiefs team, they're inconsistent on offense, in my opinion. They're missing these explosive plays that we saw in the beginning of the Patrick Mahomes era. And, I'm leaving the door open because, again, they play this Texans team who I think has one of the best defenses in the NFL. If we see something different from Patrick Mahomes and this offensive unit as a whole, I'm going to continue to leave the door open for them.
AFC North, I think it could be won by a team finishing 8-9. That's in play now. Who do you like, and then who do you like Sunday in Baltimore?
There's a part of you that has to be rooting for the 4-8 Bengals, right? Just for Joe Burrow to return to the lineup and somehow run the table and get this team into the playoffs.
They could.
The Bengals, and yeah, real quickly, they got 2 tough games coming up against, I think it's the Bills and the Ravens, before 3 pretty winnable ones. The Dolphins, the Cardinals, the Browns. And if they win out, it could kind of put them in position to steal the division with the Steelers and Ravens, both being 6-6, and they have 2 head-to-head games left as well. And remember, the Bengals, I think they won out last year to barely miss the playoffs. So there's always a chance there. But yeah, when it comes to the Ravens and Steelers, it's hard to have any kind of confidence with these teams. It's fascinating to me that Baltimore is 5-1 in its past 6 games with Lamar Jackson playing so poorly. And then on the Steelers front, they just don't have an offense. They've been outgained by 83.4 total yards per game this season, and only one team has ever made the playoffs in NFL history while getting outgained by more than 75 yards per game. So times are not very good in Pittsburgh. When it comes to the spread, I actually lean a bit towards the Steelers just because it's hard to believe the Ravens would blow out a division rival. But I do have the Ravens winning this game. Give me Baltimore by 3.
Well, it seems like it's always Baltimore by 3 or Pittsburgh by 3. It's like 16-13, 17-14 has been the score of these games for years. All right, in the NFC, are you a believer in Chicago or not, and what happens at Lambeau Sunday afternoon?
Oh, it's such a tough question because part of me does like what I see from the Bears. They went 5-0 in the month for the first time in 66 years in November, and they're 6-1 in one-score games this season, which is a metric I love looking at. In fact, they have 5 wins when trailing in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter this season. That's tied for the most by any team in the last 45 seasons. But there's 2 reasons.
But
I
against
like
bad teams, right? I mean, against the
true.
Bengals and the Giants and the Vikings and the Steelers when Mason Rudolph was playing, it was a stretch in which they could have lost all of those games.
Absolutely. But I do like seeing those teams have that clutch gene, and even if they're playing poorly, be able to eke out a win. I think that's notable. But 2 reasons I think that it's fair to buy Bear stock is because of the defense, right? They lead the NFL in takeaways. I think they have like 2 or 3 guys that are in the top 10 of interceptions this season around the NFL. They're number 1 in turnover differential this year because Caleb Williams is not a turnover magnet. He's smart with the football. But the other part is, and this is what really stood out to me in their win against the Eagles, is how about that rushing attack? Kyle Monungai, the rookie, and then DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, that was the shocker from last Friday's game. I mean, winning was one surprise, but the way they did it against that defense, rushing for 281 yards, that's where you say that travels, right? Run game travels.
Absolutely. So the run game and the defense is a reason why I think it's fair to buy Bear stock. According to our metrics, it looks like we're more believers in the Green Bay Packers, which I would probably side with as well. That's a massive matchup this week. But real quickly, on someone like Caleb Williams, I think Caleb Williams has definitely made strides as a quarterback. I don't think he's playing at a Pro Bowl level by any means, but if that's someone who can start playing the best football of his young career down the stretch with all of this great talent around him and a solid offensive line, the Bears could be a legitimate contender as well, which is absolutely crazy to say, but Ben Johnson's done a tremendous job.
So who wins that division?
I'm leaning with the Green Bay Packers. Looking at the remaining schedule, I don't know if this is good radio, but the Bears have the Packers, the Browns, the Packers again, the 49ers, and the Lions. That's a pretty tough schedule. When it comes to the Packers, they got the Bears, Broncos, Bears again, the Ravens, who we already talked about, and then at the Minnesota Vikings, who obviously we're not very high on. So I'm leaning more towards the Packers. Our metrics give them a 50.2% chance to win this division. The Bears are down at 37.5, despite holding that number 1 seed in the NFC currently. So, yeah, I'm leaning a bit towards Green Bay.
Jordan Dajani from CBS Sports joining us. So in the NFC South, they're the Panthers a half game back, and they play the Bucs twice over the final 3 weeks of the season. Who wins that division and why?
I don't know what to make of the Carolina Panthers. I'm sorry. I have no idea why they're sitting at 7-6. I mean, they have a game a couple weeks ago, like against the New Orleans Saints, where Bryce Young cannot complete a single pass, and then you go and set the Panthers single game franchise record for most yards in Atlanta, and then you follow that up with a win over Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams, the one team in the NFL I thought I could trust, Kevin. So I don't know how to make what to make of this Carolina Panthers team, but what I do make of them is that they're inconsistent. I don't know if I'm a big believer in Bryce Young and this rushing attack. It was fun watching what Canales was doing against Los Angeles, where they basically just forced the Rams defense to stop the run. And if they did, Bryce Young was going to make a clutch play on 3rd or 4th down. I'm still leaning towards the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I understand they're banged up, but they've been banged up all season. I'm going to take them over the Carolina Panthers, even if I don't view them as a legitimate contender that's maybe capable of making a Super Bowl push.
All right, last week I thought the Rams were the best team in the league. I'm still on the Rams as the best team in the league, but they lost to the Panthers. What do you make of the NFC West?
Yeah, I've always been a Rams guy in terms, they were my preseason Super Bowl pick to come out of the NFC. My AFC pick was the Baltimore Ravens. That didn't really work out well. But the Rams, I think pound for pound have probably been the best team in the NFL despite the loss to the Carolina Panthers for a couple different reasons. I mean, I love what Kyron Williams brings to the rushing attack. We know Devontae Adams is scoring 2 touchdowns per game. Puka Nacua is one of the best wideouts in the game. And Matthew Stafford, man, if I had to pick a favorite quarterback in the NFL right now, it's probably Matthew Stafford. He plays the game at a different level. He understands the game at a different level. He's still clearly got tread left on the tires. And you have to wonder if this is his final NFL season, maybe Sean McVay's final season as head coach as well. They're going to be pushing for a Super Bowl. Defensively, we know that this team is chock full of young talent as well. So pound for pound, I'm going with the Los Angeles Rams. the Seattle Seahawks have been impressive. I was a doubter of them heading into this season. Sam Darnold's played some good football. Jackson Smith and Jigba should be a legitimate MVP candidate, but I'm leaning towards the Rams.
Jordan, thanks. Enjoy it this weekend.
Absolutely, man. Good talking to you again. Thanks.
Yep. Jordan Dajani from CBS Sports. All right. Final prediction for Sunday. Final score prediction. Go ahead, Max. You first.
All right. Final score prediction is going to be Washington 23. And the number for Minnesota, it's got to be 9. Got to be 9. Because I think 9's going to show up and it's not going to look good. I've got J.J. McCarthy throwing 2 picks in the game against Washington. So that's my footnote, and that's my prediction. 23-9, Washington wins.
Washington 24, Minnesota 21.
Ooh.
They snapped the 7-game skid. I'd like to think that the defense could hold Minnesota to less than 21, but it's a hard-fought game throughout. And Jayden will be back in the saddle, and we'll have a lot to talk about on Monday. Enjoy the football weekend. Stay safe in this weather. Chris is next.